Open tonight's meeting and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have any public comment from the board this evening?
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Bertram.
I just would like to take a moment in light of Veterans Day to remember our veterans and all those that are serving and continue to serve, all those that have served, having family members that have served in the past and are currently serving. It's a huge sacrifice, and our country wouldn't be what it is without those brave men and women, and I just want to thank them all for their service.
Hear, hear. Any public comment from the public? Seeing none. At 7 o'clock, we have a public hearing on a general on-premises all-alcohol license for MLMR Inc., doing business as Primetime Pub at 5 Summer Street, Unit 10. Because the public hearing, this was sent out October 31st, 2013. Town of Lunenburg, notice of public hearing. The licensing authority will hold a public hearing on November 12th, 2013 at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Joseph F. Bellata Meeting Room, second floor of Town Hall, on the application for a general on-premises all-alcohol license. This application is being submitted by MLMR Inc., doing business as Primetime Pub. This license is to be exercised at the premise located at 5 Summer Street, Unit 10, Lunenburg, Mass. 01462. Tom Alonso, Chairperson, Board of Selectmen Licensing Authority. We all have that in front of us. Is the applicant here? You would come to the microphone and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. My name is Mark LaPrade, and I'm here representing MLMR.
It's hard to say quickly.
Yeah, it is.
It made me slow down.
I gotta keep reminding myself what it stands for.
Can you divest? When is the business scheduled to open?
Well, I don't have a scheduled date. Obviously, I realize that I'd like to be open before the end of the year if I was approved by the state,
Okay.
if possible.
We have the complete applications in front of us. Can you talk a little bit about?
The only thing you might be missing, that I spoke to Linda today, she asked me for a little chart that she needed to possibly send along to the state with the application. Room is set up at this point.
Okay. I will pass this down.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about the establishment and what you have planned there? Hours, things like that?
Currently, I'm talking about opening on the in the noontime hour, being open from noon. I guess the statute is to open till 1 a.m. on the weekdays, 2 a.m. on the weekends. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what the plan is right now. A lot of it does depend, of course, on hiring the right people, having the people coming in and knowing which, the right bartenders there, the right people there to be on premise. But that's the initial plan at this point. The bar is existing. I guess it's been out of business, to the best of my understanding, for about a year and a half. Everything inside the bar is still there. All the structures are there. The bar is there. All the up-to-date fire system is there. The bathrooms are all up to date. It seems to be, everything seems to be up to code. When I first had come up to Lunenburg to get the application, I actually ran into the building inspector, Mr. Savageau, who I have known from the past. Kind of not on a real friendly basis, but he knows who I am, I guess, and I know who he is. So I did get talking to him. He asked me what I was up here doing, and I explained it. And he indicated at that point, he said, that's a good location. He said, everything's up to code. I've been down there. He said, at this point, all we would need to do is come back down, test the fire alarms. He said, but I know the place is all up to code and acceptable. So that was a big thing off my mind.
Have you owned and run an establishment like this in the past?
I have not. I have worked for a bar for the past 18 to 20 years, in that range, 19 years, as a bartender, and I've also been as an acting manager. So it's been something that's kind of been in the back of my mind for a long time, so.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Bertram?
Do you plan to have food? Do you plan to have entertainment? Can you talk a little bit about your business
Sure.
model?
The plan right now, there's no kitchen facilities or anything like that, so what I'm looking at basically doing is snack type of food. I know you really do need to have something there, so some snack types of food is pretty much in the offering right now, what I'm thinking about. We would like to do entertainment, possibly on the weekends, maybe on a Friday and Saturday night. But what I envision it being is pretty much like an acoustic guitar player or something like that. One person, two people at the max. I don't intend on bringing in bands and things like that. I want an opportunity for people to come in and actually be able to talk while this person is playing music and not having to scream. So that's pretty much the idea at this point.
Any further questions from the board?
So you don't have a staff yet, you need to build everything at this point, sounds like.
I don't have a staff. I do have a few people that I have spoken to that are tip-certified bartenders who are willing to work, take shifts and things like that. But obviously, I didn't want to hinder the process or anything, or get people talking about coming on and hiring people until I got the approval. I have spoken to a lot of bar owners, and obviously they feel there's a lot of people out there who are trained and certified and are good people that can help us out and get the job done, so.
Okay.
You're listed here as being the manager, so your intention is to work there as well.
It is. The one thing that, obviously, being around the bar business that you learn is that you need to be there and paying attention. You need to know your customers. You need to be there as much as possible. Fortunately, I'm in a position, I'm a salesman, and I'm on the road most of the day, so my hours are flexible. It's not, I can be in and out of there as many times I need to be, and I just know that it's going to be a lot of hours, and that's what it's going to take to keep the place going the way we hope to keep it going, so.
I guess I just have a question as to the regulations regarding the manager. Is the manager required to be on premise when the business is open, or is that not a requirement of the license?
The manager doesn't have to be present all the hours that the
Okay.
business is open.
Our regulation, having read our policies today, 50% of the time, the manager is supposed to be on premises.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's not going to be a problem with it?
That's not going to be a
50%?
problem.
Okay.
Nope.
Any further questions? If there are no further questions, then I would entertain a motion on the applicant's license application.
I would make a motion to approve the general on-premise all alcoholic license for MLMR Inc., doing business as Primetime Pub at 5 Summer Street, Unit 10.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. You are approved.
Thank you very much.
Can you pick this up? Oh, no, this has to go to the state,
Right.
I'm sorry.
This is the first.
This is the ABC, not the general Vic, sorry.
Good luck.
Okay, thanks very much, appreciate it. Hope to see you all down there.
Okay, we have an appointment at 7:15, which it is not just yet, but we can review the tax exemption and deferral programs with the regional assessor. If you can speak to that until the classification hearing time.
That we can do.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. That magic time of the year.
I look forward to this presentation.
It'll be maybe the last. I'll get a tape recorder. Have a tape recorder here.
I was thinking musical numbers, some staging.
Not sure what prompted your questions about statutory exemptions. You
I
no
will
doubt have
answer
some.
that before. That was talked about because of the upcoming special town meeting and town election for the school proposal, the new school proposal. And so it was talked about, since that will have an impact
Okay.
on
Well,
taxes.
What you're seeing is a listing of all of the, what we call statutory exemptions that are available to Lunenburg, qualifying Lunenburg residents. This information is also on our website, can be downloaded by the public. And of course, we stand available in the assessor's office to answer specific questions about any of the exemptions. Just briefly, statutory exemptions are actual dollar abatements or reductions in an individual's property tax, and these apply only to owner occupants of homes. And you'll see from the sheet that they typically are offered to seniors with certain income and asset tests that have to be met, veterans, and then there's also an exemption for the blind. Many of the exemptions on the books were written some years ago, decades ago, and you'll see that the income and asset tests are fairly restrictive. In fact, most folks are hard-pressed to qualify for these exemptions these days. However, we do grant about $80,000 worth of tax relief in a given year, and this is a mix of disabled veterans that have sustained a war or service-related injury, and then seniors, typically 70 years of age or older, whose income, either as a single or married couple, falls at or below the thresholds that you see there. Any questions?
How about the deferral program? Could you talk about that, since that might be more
Sure.
widely accessible?
There was a day and time when we saw very little interest in property tax deferrals. A generation that largely owned their homes outright with no mortgages were not inclined to defer their taxes, in effect take a loan from the town that would have to be repaid upon sale of the home or upon the death of the owner. Now we are beginning to see folks 65 or older who, if they make $20,000 or less income, can apply for a property tax deferral. They may defer up to the full amount of their property tax, up to 50% of the valuation of their home. So, hypothetical, they own a home valued at $200,000. They can defer up to $100,000 in property taxes over some number of years. And as I said, upon sale of that house or the passing of the owner or owners, that tax plus interest has to be paid back to the town, likely out of the proceeds of the sale.
These exemption amounts are off the tax bill itself, correct?
Yes. The total tax bill for the year on a new application will we'll subtract that from the January or third quarter bill. Folks that have been receiving the exemptions receive annually, first part of July, their annual application forms. We ask folks to get those in as quickly as possible. The assumption is that if they've qualified in the past, that they're entitled to 1/4 of that exemption granted in the prior year, and it's automatically applied to each of the 4 quarters. If for some reason they don't qualify, I don't know that we've ever seen that situation arise, but if it were to, if they were not to qualify, that benefit would be backed out of their 3rd quarter January bill. Now, these are local exemptions. Many seniors take advantage of what we call a circuit breaker bill. It's actually a reduction off of their income tax related to their property tax. Not prepared really to speak much about that. Folks would normally see their income tax prepared to see whether or not they would qualify for a circuit breaker tax refund from the Commonwealth.
Where would a senior who's interested get this flyer? Where can they get this?
They can drop by the office, call the office, and we'll mail it to them, or if they have access to the internet, if they go to the assessor's page on the town's website, they'll see a link that they can open up and print out the form.
And are these at the senior center too, at the Eagle House, do you know?
Not sure. David on my staff is involved with the seniors and the senior work-off program, so I wouldn't be surprised, but...
Can we ask that they be placed over there, please?
Yes.
So yes, okay, so for those people who are interested, we'll have them available at the Eagle House. You can get them at the Board of Assessors office, the assessor's office. Either in person, you can call them up and ask them to mail them to you, or if you have access to a computer, you can get it off the town's website under the assessor's department page.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ebersol.
the circuit breaker on the mass taxes is worth $1,000. There's an income limit, and there is an asset limit based on assessed value, and it can't be over a certain amount. I'll get some of that information to Carrie so that can be included with the other information. It looks at the taxes that you paid in your water and sewer bill as well. That all goes to getting up to $1,000 back. Even if you don't pay any taxes, the property owner can get $1,000 back from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay, that's excellent information. Anything further on that, on the tax deferral plan and the handout? Okay, so the 715 FY 2014 tax classification hearing from the Board of Selectmen and our own regional assessor, Harold Scheid.
Thank you. Presentation number 20. I actually counted them up. I've been with you 20 times now, including tonight. And it's, of course, a great pleasure to be here as Lunenburg's, one of Lunenburg's more senior employees. And so we have that great ritual that we go through every year, and that ritual in its simplest is to determine whether or not Lunenburg will continue to levy a single tax rate across all classes of real estate and personal property, or alternatively move to a split rate. For all of the reasons that I've stated year after year, namely that Lunenburg has a relatively small commercial and industrial tax base, the Board of Assessors recommends to you the adoption of a uniform or single tax rate. By way of numbers, or the sheet that I believe you have in front of you, the CIP, or commercial, industrial, personal property sector, represents about 10% of the tax base. Simply put, it takes a $10 increase on the commercial industrial side to yield a $1 tax break on the residential property owner. And So it would take a significant increase in commercial industrial taxes to yield a very modest reduction in residential property taxes. Just a little comment about valuations. We believe that we've reached the bottom of the market. At least all of the evidence points to a stabilized real estate market. We are making some minor valuation changes that will overall result in very small value reductions, but overall most property owners will see their valuations at or around the levels that they saw last year, fiscal year 13. Early signs are that, at least earlier this year, that there was some strong activity in the real estate market, and if that continues, we might actually see some price appreciation. Communities that I work in closer into Boston, in fact, the market has rallied and rallied in a big way. Towns like Lincoln are seeing 5 to 10% property appreciation. Of course, over some time, we expect to experience that here as well.
What was the overall valuation decrease? If you're saying this is
on the
bottom.
residential side, in the aggregate, something around 1% reduction.
Since its height? No, since
Oh,
the
no,
height.
overall?
Right, overall.
I'm sorry, about 30%.
Okay, thank you. You got me really nervous. Okay, 30%.
Yeah.
And was this area more?
Very typical of Central Mass.
Okay. All right.
Same 30% in virtually all of the communities north of north of Worcester.
Any question about the tax rate?
No, but just as we're talking about values and tax rates, it's important for folks at home to remember, because oftentimes discussions are led about tax rates, or points are made behind tax rates. And of course, is you have the rate and you have the valuation, which gives you your final tax bill, ultimately. So again, as values are down, tax rates are up. Wasn't that long ago, values were up, so tax rates looked a heck of a lot better. So people just need to be bearing in mind that you got to look at the total picture, look at both sides of the equation to understand the tax burden, and you can't just pick them one or the other, because that will lead you astray. So just want to point that out. And about this discussion about the tax rate and uniform level, of course, our goal is to encourage more commercial industrial investment in town. So obviously, we don't want to do anything to hamstring that by having a higher burden on potential development. So I surely would want to keep it as we've been doing it. So,
That sounded almost like a motion.
and I would move that we maintain the uniform tax rate.
Second.
Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor of the motion to keeping a single uniform tax rate in the town of Lunenburg, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Errol, thank you as always.
Yes, I'd like to ask you to sign what we call our LA 5.
Yeah, that's with the excess levy capacity. Yeah. I have that. I have that for them to sign.
Just one.
Oh, you do? Okay.
You want to take that with you?
If it stays in the building, we'll know where to get it. Great.
Thank you.
Well, a pleasure again. Thank you very much. And,
It's shorter every year, doesn't it?
You're
I
just
hope,
one
right?
meeting away from Skyping it in, I think.
I think we'll be there one of these days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, the DPW director could not be with us tonight, so we will table that till next meeting.
Can I just ask a question about that item? Is that specifically for a specific street or a policy in general? Or I'm a little unclear about what this item is
No,
on the agenda.
The request is for a policy in general. We have a practice where the DPW director sets a date after which roads can't be open for any work because of the weather. But in discussing that, since this board serves as the road commissioners, and I don't see any documentation that that's something that you have delegated over to the DPW director, we thought it would make sense to have the board have that as a policy. Because that does come up from time to time, and we really do need to have a policy on that.
I just want to say that, I would like to see something, if we're going to, I'm certainly more open to discuss it, but just as we've drafted policies, I would hope we'd have something presented to us as an actual policy as to, when and what the timelines are and what's being recommended. Now, this is opening and closing of roads for things like utilities or whatever, but this
Yes.
isn't, obviously, this isn't closing of roads. For example, Holman Street, that's outside of.
Right, no, this is for.
I wanted
for-
to, this was so
I'm glad you said it,
unclear.
because when I first saw it, I asked the town manager exactly that. When it said road closure, I'm like, why do we have a policy about closing roads?
And in that case, I would want that to come to
I
us.
mean, opening up the physical road.
Okay, so it's
yes.
so
Right.
it's actually road
Yes.
openings.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm fine
It's a
with
term
that.
of art.
Okay.
And I didn't think anything of it. It made perfect sense to me when I
We know
put
what the
it on
language means.
agenda.
Okay.
And also, I don't think, although Jack is not here, our DPW director is not here, I don't think his request here is, I think it is just for this year. He would like us to make a policy, but his request here is not that, okay, this is my attempt at a policy. He just wants to have a date that we all agree on for this year alone.
Okay, all right.
Next, we have accept and approve and/or approve a consultant agreement with Colonial Power Group. And I see they have a representative here tonight. I will,
Do you wanna-
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Brian Murphy. I'm the president of Colonial Power Group. We've been the town's consultant in the administration, management, and in fact the design of your municipal aggregation program for the past 3 years. And we are here asking for an extension under that contract. I do believe it expires. If it hasn't already, it might expire shortly. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get the town manager to put it on your agenda for this evening.
can you tell us the highlights of this? for
Actually,
the people?
did you bring the highlights we had talked about?
Yeah, I know that not everybody on the board has been present on the board since the program's initial inception, so I thought it would be helpful to, as Mr. Alonso said, go over some of the highlights. The initiation of this process began, in fact, before Colonial Power even reached out to the town manager. I think the town manager had looked at this off and on for a few years before, but in the spring of 2010, we reached out to the town manager, and she said, why don't you come in? And we started to give the board some general overviews of what these programs look like, and eventually the town put an RFP out for consulting services related to the design and implementation and ongoing management of the program. And Colonial Power was fortunate enough to secure the contract then, and that was about 3 years ago. In November of 2010, it went to, it was on the agenda of your special town meeting that fall. The language passed. Colonial Power subsequently steered the process through the various regulatory approvals, including securing this board's approval of the overall aggregation plan. It then went to the Department of Energy Resources as well as the Department of Public Utilities. After those agencies reviewed it and also approved it, we took the town to market. That is, we pooled all the customers who were on default service with Unitil together and issued an RFP for power supply. And the power supply program commenced in January of 2012. So you can see that it was a long process from the time we first approached the town to the time we were hired by the town to the time power supply actually flowed from a source other than Unitil's default service. It was a full year before we were able to get the necessary approvals. From January of 2012 to December of 2012, the town's power supplier, or the participating consumers' power supplier, was Con Edison Solutions. They had been the low bidder in December of 2011, as well as the subsequent May. So they did 2 6-month contracts with the town. At the end of last year, in December of 2012, the power markets were such that Unitil's default service was the best price available. And at that time, you may recall that we made a recommendation that you suspend the program until the market became favorable for your residents and businesses again. So there was a 6 or 7 month suspension from January 2013 until June. Some counts didn't enroll until July because of meter read dates, but the town selected, and Colonial Power administered an RFP process again, and the town selected Dominion Resources, which is another large retailer similar to Con Edison Solutions. That contract was a 1-year contract, but in 2 6-month installments, so to speak. The first installment was from June until this December, and under the terms of that contract, the supplier had the right to serve the participating consumers from this December until next June, provided it could beat Unitil's basic service offering. And they can and will, and they also offered an extension through next November, and the town manager accepted their proposal about 2 weeks ago. So the town currently has Dominion Resources as its power provider, and will continue to do so until next November. And where Colonial Power is asking for the opportunity to continue to manage this process for you for as long as you see fit. I think the terms of the existing agreement allow you to offer some extensions. I don't know the particulars of the term, but it might be a year or something like that. I'll have to defer to your packet or to the town manager on the specifics of what you're allowed to do with regard to extension. We're hopeful that in the future we'll be able to bring you competition as we have in the past, but we'd also like to, and I'm not making a promise here, but we'd like to entertain the idea of getting another power provider into the mix. Currently, we solicit to probably 5 or 6 of the major electricity retailers that are active in the state. And they're fine companies, very reputable, and they do a good job, with the exception of the snafu we had with Con Edison Solutions, where they had sent some arrearage letters to consumers. You may remember, I believe this was last spring, I think, some letters went out in error. And Con Edison moved quickly to correct that error, but nonetheless, it is a demerit on their record. But there are other power providers that we'd like to bring into the mix. In particular, there's one, it's a subsidiary of the Hampshire Council of Governments, which is an organization some of you may be familiar with. They are a regional service provider based in Northampton. They happen to have a retail power provider license, and they use that license to provide power to municipalities, to the power that lights the municipal facilities like schools and town buildings. They're interested in serving aggregations, and in fact, they want to run one of their own in Western Massachusetts. But because of their unique characteristics, we think they might be, and I stress might, be able to serve this community at favorable rates when your next contract expires. And we're sort of running a test case in some senses with them, with the town of Lancaster. The town also has a very similar municipal aggregation program, and they were served by a big company called Constellation for the past year, but they recently switched to Hampshire Power, which is the name of the license operated by Hampshire Council of Governments. And so if all goes well with the town of Lancaster, we think that they might be able to be one of the bidders, and hopefully an aggressive bidder as well, to continue the program and deliver some savings to your folks. Those are the main points,
Yeah.
except I want to give you a couple of key figures, and I think this is, I'm remiss in not mentioning these right off the bat. To date, the program has saved residents and businesses in this town $183,301.72. And that's a cumulative total since the program's inception in January of 2012. The bulk of these savings came during 2012, when the program had one full year of continuous operation, and at a time when the town was able to secure rates that were significantly lower than the utility-provided rates. Since then, the market has tightened or narrowed, and right now the town has a margin of savings, but it's much slimmer than it was. But at least it's something, and it's at obviously no cost to consumers. And if anybody, for any reason, desires to opt out, they can always do that as well, as you know. I wanted to disclose our commission fees in total. This was something that was requested, and we're happy to do that. Since Colonial was retained by the town in November of 2010, Colonial Power has received $54,031.13 in direct commission payments as a result of our efforts to design, implement, and manage the program for you. If you would like more information about those two key figures, I'm happy to discuss them.
Your commission fees are coming, I mean, the town, let me step that back. The town is not paying you anything directly.
No, nothing from the town's coffers.
Right. So your commissions are coming from the work and the offers that you obtain from the energy providers you work with and offer to the town.
Yes, in essence, the ratepayer in town pays our commission through a per kilowatt hour fee, 1/10 of a penny per kilowatt hour fee that's embedded in the rate that the winning supplier has to include.
Right. But since we are choosing somebody who is under what Unitil would be, they're still getting those reduced rates. So
That's true.
I just wanted everybody to know the pay structure of, how Colonial gets paid and make those commission payments.
Thank you. One of the key things about this program when it was first pitched to the board was that it wouldn't require, other than the town manager's time, it wouldn't require, and yours as well, it wouldn't require any outlay from the town's treasury. Wouldn't impact the tax rate, wouldn't impact property owners, it would only impact electricity ratepayers.
I wanted to mention that I did do some research into what commission fees were paid to other consultants, and the fee that we're paying is pretty much industry standard. I didn't really find anything that was different than that. Maybe 3 weeks ago or so, I was asked to speak on a panel at one of the regional planning commission, which one was I at? MAPC?
Yes, the
MAPC
Metropolitan
in
Area
Boston.
Planning Commission.
I was very disappointed to find out after I agreed to do it that it was in Boston and it was at 9 o'clock in the morning. But it was a very interesting panel, and so at that meeting we had some discussion about fees paid to consultants. So I was able to find that out there, and I'm pleased to hear that the overall savings is $183,000. The only data point that I had was $30,000, and I think that was from the first 6 months. And I did share that with the group in my presentation, and it was funny because I was animated in my presentation, as I'm sure you have a hard time believing. But the first question was a guy sitting in the back row, and he said, "No disrespect, ma'am, but why are you so excited about $30,000? And when you think about it, $30,000 over, close to 4,000 households in town, it really doesn't add up to much, but $183,000 is a whole lot better. So I'm going to find out who that was that asked that question and give him the updated data.
Would that have increased your excitement at that meeting? If you knew 183,000?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
If somebody noted the 30, I can imagine what you would have been like at 180. I appreciate the work that your company has done in bringing this at no outlay to us, number one, and for the most part, and please correct me, Madam Town Manager, if I'm wrong, I mean, for the most part, not a lot of work on our part either. So we are looking to you to get the deals and then bring them to something that we can offer the ratepayers as a break. So if we can save $183,000 over the course of those 2 years, what is your, I mean, I realize it's always a crystal ball, but what is your outlook for the energy levels at what you may be able to secure versus what Unitil will be providing?
Unitil's, and this is a good opportunity to state this. I know I've had this conversation with the town manager, but it's important for everybody to know that prices are going up. The current rates that the town's participating consumers have is 7.75 cents per kilowatt hour. That's going up to 9.2, and that's reflective of a broad increase that all ratepayers are going to be absorbing across the state and indeed across New England. This is due to market rules put in place by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to address fuel shortages that occurred last January. It's not something any one of us felt because the independent system operator that manages the grid in New England was able to keep power flowing, but because of the shortage of natural gas coming into New England on a very thin pipeline, some power generators were unable to obtain the gas to turn on their generating units, and it created situations that were close to what you might call a brownout. This was during a very cold snap, and during cold snaps, gas becomes a little bit more difficult to transport through pipelines, and when it's in limited availability, certain facilities have first rights to it, homes, hospitals, things like that. Power plants have to get in line, and when they were unable to obtain the fuel, they just would literally call in sick for the day. They'd call up ISO and say, I can't generate. And so you have a bunch of power plants sort of going offline throughout New England, and because we're so dependent on natural gas, that created a situation that, again, threatened brownout. To address that, the ISO and the FERC have offered incentive payments to generators who can run on both natural gas and oil. And they've directed companies that have generating facilities that can do both to stockpile oil for this winter. And so these oil companies have basically gone out and bought $78 million worth of oil to have on hand in case this happens again. That cost, by FERC's order, is immediately put on consumers. So this fall, utilities like Unitil and power providers like your power provider, Dominion Resources, were forced to incorporate that assessment into their bid prices. So that's why you're seeing prices in National Grid service territory at 10 cents, in Unitil service territory about mid-9s, as well as in NSTAR and Western Mass Electric. So those things are temporary. They're happening mostly in January and February, but when you average out those prices, it comes out to between 9 and 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Those things will moderate after the winter's over, and that's why the town's able to get back down to 7.7 for the balance of the summer into the fall. So you're going to, over the course of the next couple of winters, you're going to see this seesaw effect while the pipeline constraints are still in place. There are improvements slated to come online for those pipelines, basically to expand the size of the straw that we're drinking out of up here in New England. But those things won't be in place until at least 2016. So there's an increase on the way. The town has mitigated it to the best extent possible and offered some stability going forward through the balance of the year. So once we get over this stuff, the crystal ball, as you asked for, the average price over 10 years here in Lunenburg has been about 8.6 cents per kilowatt hour. So in the next leg of this journey, you're a little bit above, but for the last few years, you've been below.
Anything to add?
No.
Any other questions, comments? So I'd entertain a motion on the consultant agreement before us with Colonial Power.
I would make a motion to approve the consultant agreement with Colonial Power Group as contained in the packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Okay.
Thanks for partnering with us for the next few years.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to do it. I'll be in touch with the town manager to get executed copies of that for you all. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, open the warrant for the special town meeting, set the closing date, and review the draft ballot question.
So there is a schedule in your packet that the town clerk put together, taking into consideration any of our requirements, either charter requirements or bylaw requirements. We did set the date for the special town meeting at last week's meeting, but we didn't have an item on the agenda to officially open the warrant. So we have that this evening, and I would ask that the board officially open the warrant this evening. In order to meet the requirements of the charter and/or bylaw, the warrant needs to remain open until 4 p.m. on November 25th. I think every time we have a town meeting, we talk about the charter and bylaw requirements, requiring that the warrant be open for such a lengthy period of time that it cuts into the review time that you have. So the schedule that we've put together appears to be a little disjointed because we have to keep the warrant open until the 25th. But then in order to meet all of our requirements for printing and getting the warrant posted, you're doing your review. The Finance Committee is doing its review in theory when the warrant is still open. And this happens at town meeting, for annual town meeting, and I'm not sure how much we've talked about it here, but I know the Finance Committee brings it up every year. But it's a requirement of the charter, so that's what we have to do. So we would open it this evening. Again, it would remain open until 4 p.m. on the 25th. We are required to post a notice in our town newspaper, which we have sent to the Ledger, and it will be posted this week. We have set Tuesday the 19th, which is next Tuesday, through Thursday, November 21st, to begin review of articles. The Finance Committee will be holding their public hearing on December 19th, which will be after the warrant has to be in print and to people. So that is a bit awkward as well. I did include, the MSBA is very particular about the language for both the warrant article and the ballot question. I did include their bulletin, and on pages 3 and 4 of the bulletin, which precedes that timetable that the town clerk put together, you will find the warrant article, the form of the warrant article on page 3 of that bulletin, and the form of the ballot question on page 4. I have sent both of those over to the superintendent and asked that she supply the description of the project. Once I have that back, I will complete the draft of this, send it to town council, and have the superintendent send it over to the MSBA for final approval. We will also send both to our bond counsel, which is our special town council that deals with bond issues, to make sure that we meet any requirements that bond counsel would place on either the warrant article or the ballot question. You can see that the ballot question, the warrant article is very lengthy and cumbersome. The ballot question is far simpler. You would think that they probably would be the reverse, but they're not.
So if the MSBA is not going to give us their final, or not even their final, but their Well, actually, their final commitment until November 20th.
November 20th, yes.
I'm not sure how we're going to review and submit opinions on the 19th.
That would be for anything that was printed in the warrant. Any recommendations, either from the Board of Selectmen or Finance Committee, to be printed in the warrant. So that will be, I don't think we should, either board should plan on having a recommendation in the warrant. If you are adamant that you want to have one in the warrant, then I guess you would be looking at a special meeting.
Although we could still vote to support the article.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm, at this early hour, I'm inclined, as we get closer, to want to include a recommendation with the note that I think anything that changes between then and the actual meeting is going to be, as far as design of the building and price-wise, going to be in a smaller amount than the whole building cost we'll be looking at. So I think the changes, in a relative sense, would be fairly minor.
Should be, yeah.
So I think we can take, if we want to, and I don't want to do that now, certainly, but I want to get closer to that. But I don't think we're at risk of any major change between the time that they have their vote on the 20th and then when town meeting and special election are.
So they actually go to the printer on the 29th? Or they're printed at that point? Remember?
You know, they wouldn't be printed. They would probably be going to the printer.
Okay.
We have to have you can see December 10th is when you would sign them and they would be posted, so the warrant needs to be finalized and printed somewhere between November 29th and December 10th. This is going to be a pretty short warrant. I would imagine it's probably
Right.
4, maybe 6 pages, so it's not going to be a big printing job.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in looking at this information, I just have a question. You said that the MSBA is very specific about the language, but one of the things that slightly concerns me is that it says a city or town must vote to appropriate and authorize the full amount of a project's costs, including both the local share and the MSBA share, if any.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to the actual article, it says, "And that the amount of borrowing authorized shall be reduced by any grant set forth in the project funding agreement." So you still have to appropriate the entire amount, but you're only going to borrow what's left over after MSB gives it to you. So technically, you're buying the whole project.
Well, and that's my concern, Bob, is, yes, it will be reduced, but anytime we've gotten to a situation where we go to town meeting, typically we say we will do up to a certain amount, and we're not, but we are asking for full authorization for the total project.
Right.
And that just makes it a little bit harder to, I know all of us are going into this knowing our expectation is that we're going to receive this grant from the MSBA, but what we're asking people to do at both the article and the ballot is fund the whole project.
Right, but we're going in with the full commitment of the MSBA to fund their part.
Right.
So,
But it
and
just-
again, we're only going to borrow our share. We're not going to borrow the whole deal. And anytime you can stop. You don't have to do anything. If
I
there was an issue with
understand
the
that, but the
MSBA.
authorization is out there regardless of what happens with the MSBA, and that's just makes me uneasy.
It's not unique to Lunenburg.
Right.
And the reality is, we won't go forward without the MSB. It's not going to happen, so.
Right.
It's not something that we can do a bait and switch
Right.
with the
but-
voters, but I understand that somebody may see one number and when we were saying the other number, but what's been good is that the school building committee has been putting the full number and our share number
Right.
out there as well, so it's been getting out there. But we just have to educate people to say, we have to appropriate the entire amount, but the only thing we're going to be responsible for is our share.
Right, right. And I just, I just wish that we had the ability to put that wording in the article, but we don't. So we're going to have to do everything we can to make it clear that although this is what the article says, this is what we're asking you to vote for. So, just makes it a little bit more difficult.
Well, we can certainly try to put that information in the article and see what they have to say. I think this is, I mean, I want to say it's at a minimum. I'm sure they're not going to allow a whole lot more, but we certainly can ask about some clarification.
So you need a couple of motions, right? So we need to open the warrant.
We need you to open the warrant and set the closing date first.
Are those separate motions, or can they be done in the same
You
motion?
can do one motion.
So I would entertain a motion on the opening of the warrant for the special town meeting and the closing date for the warrant of the special town meeting.
See, opening date the 5th or the 12th?
Let's call it the 12th.
Would move that we open the warrant for the town meeting and election, no, just town meeting.
Special town meeting.
Special town meeting, effective today, November 12th, and we will close it Tuesday, November 25th at 4 PM.
Second. Second.
Any further discussion?
I actually just have a question. When we talked about the timelines, you indicated that the warrant had to be open for a specific amount of time. So by moving that opening date back to the 12th, we're still within that time period?
It's specific to a certain number of days prior to the meeting. It needs to be open a certain number of days prior to the
Okay,
meeting.
so I just-
it's
so-
the closing date that is
Important.
the trigger.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
So the next thing I've been asked is if there is a snowstorm on January 7th, do we have a snow date for the meeting? So I did discuss this with the town clerk, and what happens is you should identify ahead of time what the snow date would be, what the rain date is for the meeting. And if we cannot have the meeting because of the weather, the town clerk and the town moderator go and post the building. But I need you to identify ahead of time, not necessarily tonight, but ahead of time when that would be, so that I can make sure that the auditorium is available. And if I had been asked the question in time to put it on the agenda, we would, but it was asked of me over the
So
weekend.
Can we get it by next meeting?
Next week, yes.
That sounds perfectly fine. I'm assuming that it has to be before the election, although that, I guess there's the possibility of having the cart before the horse.
That's right.
It doesn't have to
Have
be.
to be.
It doesn't
but
have
I
to
think
be,
it should
but
be
would
because it's the discussion
Right.
portion.
So, okay, let's just see what days past, Wednesday to Friday are available.
Yes, okay.
I want to point,
Mr. Chair, just a question, what about snow date for the election? Is that a similar problem?
I think that's a much bigger problem.
That actually was asked of the town clerk, and the answer is that it would have to be a state of emergency statewide in order for it to not happen. Elections go on.
and talking about elections and town meeting, I want to point out on this schedule 2 important dates for people. That the last day to register to vote for the election is Saturday, December 21st at 8 p.m. That is the latest you can register to vote in the town election. The last day to register to vote for town meeting is Saturday, December 28th at 8 p.m. Now, I see on this schedule that it says 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Are those the hours that the town clerk's office will be open that day?
Yes.
Okay, so the
Yes.
town clerk's office on those 2 dates, those 2 consecutive Saturdays, Saturday, December 21st, and Saturday, December 28th, will be open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So if you are new to town, if you have never registered, if you are turning 18 before these 2 dates, then please register to vote so you can participate in those 2 very important events, special town meeting and the special town election. Review of the ballot question, do we have anything further than just us looking at it and?
No, I don't have anything yet, but when I receive the project description from the superintendent, I'll finalize this. I expect to have it next week.
Okay.
And have it off to the attorneys and the MSBA next week as well.
Okay, so that'll be back on there. Next, accept and approve a Board of Selectmen policies and procedures. Everybody should have received the newly dated and minted November 12th, 2013 Board of Selectmen policies and procedures that we have been working on over the past few years. And we're at a point where we are ready to adopt these. Of course, they are works in progress, and as we have all noted in our workshops, some already will be discussed further. But we wanted to take a point-in-time snapshot and adopt the work that we've done already and recognize that. And that is the document we have before us. I want to thank, by the way, Mrs. Bertram for all the note-taking and making all the changes. You know, she was our for not recording secretary, but somebody who kept track of all the changes we were making and put in a lot of effort and a lot of work. So I want to acknowledge that here. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, there's just one item that, on 7.08 Town Communication, that's on page 55. I know there are several sections that we're going to continue to discuss, but we had actually, I believe, in our workshop, deleted the last two paragraphs, A and B, because we didn't want to restrict.
You are correct.
So that's the only thing that at this point, that if we take those out, then the other ones will certainly have some typos and other things like that. But I will echo Mrs. Bertram's hard work on keeping track of this, because not only do you have to keep track of the language, but the numbering system, because I was looking at something, it's like, oh, that's right, the numbering system, because we got rid of a section. And as long as you have one person doing that, then it keeps the flow going. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. And I will just point out, Jamie had talked to me that page 7, there's a numbering issue, so I'll correct that as well when I strike the 2 paragraphs that Mr. Ebersol just mentioned.
Okay, so we have 2 choices here. We can wait till those changes are made till next week, and we can adopt it? Because they're going to be made, correct?
Right.
But we can adopt it with those changes noted.
I would make a motion to adopt, understanding those changes will be made.
Okay.
Second?
There you go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's been a long time working on this over the course of many board members.
Right.
Some of us have been here since the outset.
Put it in context, it started in 2007 when Rob Bowen was chair. And then it was kind of unearthed again a couple of years ago, and Paula has kind of run with it, gotten it. At that point, it was still pretty scattered. She got it into an order we could all understand, keep track of, and work through. And again, it's kept track of all the changes that have been made, so it's pretty monumental work into it, so.
And then we have a new policy coming tonight about road closures, so it's a continuing
So it's a
living document, right?
And just for everyone's information, there is, based on our last meeting and our meetings, there is a document that is included in the packet that outlines the things that we were going to continue to review, as well as some new policies that we were going to put forth. So this just kind of gives us an outline of what we wanted to look back at and what we want to work on. So.
What page was the numbering issue on?
Page 7.
7, okay. So how about we will make those, so Mrs. Bertram doesn't have to make those changes, we will make those
Awesome.
changes.
Thank you.
I see it, okay. Minutes.
There is.
Excuse me. These last week's. Yep.
Yeah.
And warrants.
There is the water commitment that you approved last week. Apparently, there were 2 signature pages, and only one got signed by most members.
Okay.
And there is an accounts payable warrant.
Accounts payable warrant in the amount of $514,549.17.
That's it.
And any action file issues? None. Before we get to committee reports, of course, I had on here, we had a 7 o'clock appointment, and I didn't announce board and committee vacancies, so I'll take this moment before we get into committee reports. There are several, but I'm going to announce 2 this evening. We have, that are 2 very important, I mean, all committees are important, so I don't want to, but some have more vital interest in the day-to-day workings of the town and policy setting. So the first one is, again, the Public Access Cable Committee. There are currently three vacancies, and that you will be, again, asked to participate in and help guide and shape the programming of the 2 cable channels, the one government and education channel and the one public access channel that we have. It's a great chance to get involved with getting to know studio equipment, getting to work on programs, getting to promote programs, getting to work on establishing policies for how citizens can get programs on the air, covering potentially, if you would like, some of the public meetings, some of the town events, sporting events, theater events at the high school. So there's a lot of things getting involved in. It's a great community participation, and it has a great impact on the town. So again, if you're interested in any of those things, please fill out a talent bank form for the Public Access Cable Committee. The other committee is the Personnel Committee, which has 2 vacancies. Personnel Committee works in establishing policies for the Salary Administration Plan, and that covers, of course, all employees who are not covered under any other union plan. So you'd be work on establishing steps, work principles, all kinds of employee guidelines for those employees who fall under the Salary Administration Plan. And again, a very important event. We've had a couple of resignations just recently, and we need to fill those. So if your interest is in personnel, or if you have expertise in it, or just an interest, please, again, fill out a talent bank form for the Personnel Committee. With that in mind, or that behind us, I will say committee reports. Board of Health.
No report.
Building Reuse Committee.
Yes, we're having a workshop on the 18th of this month, hopefully to finalize our findings and recommendations. We'll meet on the 2nd of December and should be ready to present to this board on the 3rd of December or the 10th.
Excellent. Capital Planning Committee.
We'll have the last of our input meetings tomorrow morning, and then we work on establishing priorities and reporting to the town manager.
Finance Committee.
No report since the last meeting.
I think they meet this Thursday, correct?
Correct.
Library Board of Trustees.
They meet next week.
MPO.
Meeting tomorrow.
Planning Board. PAC.
It's unknown when they're going to meet.
School Committee.
No report.
School Building Committee.
There's a coffee at the library this Saturday from 10 to 2. If you have questions or you want to just kind of see some of the plans, et cetera, and discuss with folks, come on down.
Sewer Commission.
Sewer Commission met with the Small Water System Services. That's the outsourcing company that is maintaining the various pumps. They're very happy with the work they've done. They're within budget, and they proposed various capital improvement plans, and some of them have been implemented just as they went through. The Lunenburg Village 40B status, the Zoning Board of Appeals is in the process of reviewing that. They stayed firm on not waiving the privilege fee for additional affordable housing units. They already did for the prior ones because there was a quid pro quo exchange of improvement of Pleasant View Avenue, and there was no such recommendation from the developer at that point. They went with the lower prior connection fee that was in place when the original development went into place, even though it's gone up. And they've waived the inflow added fee that came in since the other time. So they worked with the developer, but they didn't give them everything they asked. That's in the hands of the Zoning Board of Appeals to make that decision based on whether the project's affordable or not, but they got the full input from the Sewer Commission. Lancaster Ave, they were waiting the final acceptance and the conveyances as of various easements as done by town council. So that's just about done. They're meeting tonight, so that may actually be finalized. Grease trap compliance report from all the various restaurants. The paperwork has been coming in as a result of the communications with the property owners.
Excellent. And no report on the mass broadband. Town manager reports.
The only thing I wanted to mention is the most recent information on our survey question that is online regarding the financing of the school project. I gave you a printout. As of today, we had 42 people responding to our survey question, 27 indicating a preference to finance the project over a 30-year term, 15 indicating a preference to finance it over a 20-year term. So it's still running, the ratio is still about the same as it's always been, but we've had about 100% increase in responses since last week.
So someone had communicated to me they couldn't find the survey, so I just want to point out it's at lunenburgmass.gov on the front page under news and announcements. The October 30th, I think, is the date. Story is about the selectmen looking for input. If you open that story, there's a link to the survey.
Mm-hmm.
So
Can we move it to more visible somewhere?
Well, I think
front page.
it's the front page, and it's still the first story under news and
I guess you could put it in capital letters, but it's pretty prominent with the way the website's set up. And then I think
Laser lights around it. Says, click here.
because right under that, I think the planning board survey is there as
Yeah,
well.
right.
So they're both there.
I missed that one.
With the open house, as Mr. Matthews indicated, with the coffee at the Lunenburg Public Library this Saturday, and then there are upcoming presentations that the School Building Committee is offering about the project, I really encourage people from all parts of town, everywhere. If you are a voter, if you are a parent, if you are a senior, please come to these meetings and get all the information that you can from the people who are intimately involved with the whole formation of how we got to where we are and what the project is, and can answer all your questions. It's very important for us that everybody be well informed when we have these discussions at town meeting and when they're asked to vote on this at the town election. So again, lots of times to come and find out more information, as well as if you have access to a computer, to find out information on your own from the various websites on the town's page for the school committee and the school building committee. So I encourage that highly. No appointments and resignations, no executive session. So at the end of our next, we are at the end of agenda. The next meeting is next Tuesday, November 19th. And is there any final public comment from?
Just having a moment. Don't
Okay.
mind us.
Any final public comment from the board? Any final comment from the public? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Or a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Good night, everyone.
Carrie, I think this one.